Well, welcome back to Finance Uncut. On today's episode, we explore what is the true value of silver. So what is silver's value? Is it $30, $100, $204, or $600? So in a second, I'm going to cut to a few clips from some different analysts who have got some different figures in mind. And then we'll come back and I'll share some charts and some graphs, and I'll give my opinion on what I think the value of silver is.
Tavi, you were talking about having $30 silver. So when we look at that, what are the important levels that you're looking at, and what does the year ahead look like to you guys?
Look, we need to close on a quarterly basis. If you just draw a line from the peak of 2011 all the way to where we are now, it's incredible that this 26 level on silver is sort of a big deal. If it closes above that on a quarterly candle, it is considered a breakout from a multi-year trend. And as we all know, and most precious metals investors have seen the long-term chart of silver, which looks like a massive cup and handle. And so does gold, by the way, if you look at it adjusted for inflation. I think that we're headed much higher than most believe. And it's happening at a time when sentiment continues to be very negative. We have all the macro drivers to die for in a precious metals bull market. And at the same time, we're seeing a lot of investors losing their focus and talking about how cryptocurrencies are going to replace gold and silver. You can't replace a metal with something that is not even tangible. And so I think there is a lot of big developments happening even in the sentiment space of the precious metals industry, along with this CapEx decline that has been already a problem for so many years, hitting at a moment of the pandemic's issues too. So I think silver is headed much higher than where it is right now. I think, as I said, the important level is 26. When we close above that on the quarterly candle, there is really not a lot of resistance all the way to 36. And then at 36, we start seeing some resistance. We may see another pullback during that period. And then after that, I think we're headed to new all-time highs. I think that's where silver, sort of that roadmap, in my opinion, is going to play out in the following months or maybe a year or so.
The true fundamental value of silver is about $600 an ounce.
Wow.
And, and when I say that, because you're going, wow, however, here's how you get that. Silver is the secondary monetary instrument, and it has a use. So does gold. Gold is the primary, silver is the secondary, and it has use across the entire global economy. So both physical gold and silver have the broadest base of buyer and the broadest base of functionality. I mean, it's used in electronics, it's used in, cell phones, it's used in food, it's used in the monetary system, it's used in every single area of the global economy. So no matter what you're doing, you always want to say, okay, well, what is its true value? Something that's completely being overlooked in the markets, in every area of the markets these days, because they're telling us this time is different. Not different. It's never different. 4,800 times is telling me it's not different.
Yeah.
But if you want to know the true fundamental value of any asset or instrument, so it's not just some talking head going, well, it's worth $600 or it's worth $50,000 or it's worth zero or what have you. The way that you get it's a little nuanced, but you need to figure out what is the single most important function that asset or that instrument performs for its creators, not what you want it to do, but why was it created to begin with? And then you can look at how history has valued that function. So that you don't have to say, well, what's your price target? That has nothing to do with me because I'm not going to sell silver. When silver gets to $600 an ounce, I'm going to use these chopsticks to buy real goods. I'm not going to turn them into paper, right? Fiat money that is rapidly losing value.
Let's talk about your triple-digit silver call. Now, you've been on the show in the past before talking about this longer-term outlook. And let's break down the fundamentals here and talk to us about how the market could get there. Let's start with the industrial component, and before we move on to the investment demand component. Silver is in a unique position where you've got both components to consider. So what are some of the industrial applications today that you're looking out for that could potentially drive up demand?
Well, everyone that's listening to this podcast or this interview knows, my spiel and my bullish comments regarding the metal. I look at silver as a strategic metal, not so much as a precious metal, despite the fact it is precious. Going to the precious story for a second. In 2020, for every 1 ounce of gold mined worldwide, there was only 7 ounces of silver mined, which is a pretty shocking number considering we're trading at something in the order of 70 to 1 in the financial markets. So that's just that. Now, on the pure demand side, when it comes to whether it's the Green Deal or whether it's just the electrification of the planet or what have you, you look at copper prices, you look at commodities. Silver is really the only commodity that's not really reaching its highs that it has reached now on 2 separate occasions back in 1980 and in 2011. I think we're going to see that high breached in this cycle. And when it does, it's going to wake up the market. And that's what I think. Once it breaks through the $50 level, I think that it's going to get up to the $100 level pretty quickly. It might bounce around 70 or 80. Who knows? But I think those are the kinds of numbers. Copper broke through $10,000 a pound yesterday, and oil's on its way back to $100 a barrel, and we're getting into a pretty inflationary time. And also, you add the actual supply deficits on top of that with silver, you've got a perfect storm. Just in the making, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about the silver question. $200. Well, silver is definitely very much restrained to gold. Right now, it's outperforming again. In other words, over the last year or so, it's been an outperformer to gold. So it's been better to own silver the last year and a half than it has been to own gold. And it's likely to continue that way for the next couple of years. But why $200 on silver? Well, it's more or less a logarithmic scale measure where we look at the prior peaks. There were 2 peaks, 1980 and in 2011, that were either side of $50. Yeah. And in between, we were down to as low as, recently as $11. And after the first time to 50, we went down to, I think, about $5. But when we look at a logarithmic scale of silver, it looks like not only should it, one, go up to challenge the 2 prior highs, but take them out and probably go as much or a log scale beyond that as they've been living below that dual peak. And that would put silver more in line with gold. In other words, it would catch silver up to what gold has done. Gold hasn't hit multiple highs in a flat level. It's made higher highs each time. Silver hasn't. And I think silver's about to unleash in a way that not only takes out the dual highs, gives you a triple top breakout above 50, but catches up to gold on a long-term basis. And as long as we see, one, gold in an uptrend, which is not being threatened whatsoever by this protracted pullback, and 2, silver on a spread basis continue to outperform gold, which it's doing, we'll continue to hold with the idea that, one, gold's probably going to 8,000 minimum, and silver's going to catch up to it historically. And I think there's some other folks that have come up with numbers like that, even higher than 200.
So I did this video a couple of weeks ago. I'll put a link in the description below. But I shared an article written by Jeff Clark from goldsilver.com where we get that price of silver of $204. And in this video, I shared this chart here where if silver was to copy the silver bull market from 76 to 80, and you take the beginning of the market, the silver price at 17 dollars, and you extrapolate a gain of 1,205.5%, and you come to a silver dollar price of $204. So if we have a look at the chart of silver over the last 12 months, you can see that there's actually been quite a bit of support for silver. It hasn't fallen back too much from its highs. And you can see that there's actually quite a bit of strength and quite a bit of momentum jumping back in. When we have a look at the 1 month chart, you can see that it did hit a bottom just under $24 back in late March, and we're now above that $28 mark. So what I want to see from here is it breaking the $30 mark, maintaining that. There is some potential resistance around $35, $36. If it breaks through that, then I believe we're going to break the all-time high. And well, if you listen to Keith Neumeyer, once it breaks its all-time high, it's jumping up to $100 very quickly, triple digits. So that's kind of my price targets from here. I want to see it break 30 from here, hold and maintain that, break that $35, $36 mark, maintain that, and then I think that all-time high will be smashed. And look, maybe Keith is right, and we head to triple digits pretty quickly. I know Mike Maloney and Jeff Clark think that we'll probably fluctuate around $70 to $80 an ounce for a while before it does hit 100, but they also think that it's going to hit 100 quite soon. Look, real assets versus financial assets. When you look over the last century, real assets versus financial assets have never been this cheap. Never been this cheap. And as a value investor, I like buying things that are cheap. I like buying things that are undervalued. And so for the last 18 months, I've been buying commodities. I've been buying gold and silver. And I've done extremely well over the last 18 months or so. I was buying, and I've said this before, I was buying gold and silver, jumped back into the market in 2018, 19, and then early last year when the gold-silver ratio got above 100, all I was doing, or actually even when the gold-silver ratio went above 90, all I was doing was buying silver. I stopped buying gold for a while, and all I was buying was silver. And that's obviously played out very nicely to this point, yet I think there's a lot more movement ahead. Now, commodities in general have had a very good run. Some of them are starting to just roll over a little bit at the moment, which I expected. They've had a great run. I expect them just to, over the short period, maybe pull back a little bit, maybe go sideways, just settle down a little bit. But moving forward into next year and the year after that, in fact, for the rest of this decade, I think we're going to have a commodity super cycle. And, because I am on that inflation side of things, I think inflation is going to get quite nasty. And so you want to have real assets. Well, for me, I'm going for real assets over financial assets. Now, you guys know that I do trade options and sell options for premiums and whatnot. And I do own stocks, mainly commodity-based stocks and biotech stocks. Other than that, I am not touching financial assets. So when we look at the gold price and the real rates, we know that gold has got a lot more run in it. And if gold has a lot more run in it, then silver has a lot more run in it. Now, in my opinion, this is how I see things playing out. CPI is going to increase. Inflation is going to rage. I believe central banks will do yield curve control. They will cap interest rates, and therefore real rates will continue to get even more negative, which is just going to be an absolute dynamite under the price of gold and silver. If central banks allow interest rates even to rise a couple of percent from here, we're going to see an almighty crash of just about every asset class because of the debt bubble that we've got in every sector: household, corporate, government. And so I don't see central banks playing that move. There is a chance. I admit there is a possibility, but I see central banks coming in, doing yield curve control, keeping interest rates low, letting inflation run. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I just can't believe the situation that we're in. Yet the public just don't understand what's going on. And so I see real rates going even further negative. So, let's say inflation hits 10%. A lot of really good people that I follow are saying inflation is going to be 20% next year. 20%. Let's say it's 10%, and let's say that central banks are able to keep the yields under 2%. You've got negative real yields of 8%. That is so bullish for gold and silver. And so moving forward, absolutely, I'm all in. When we look at the silver to currency supply, the M2 currency supply, I can't use that word. It's the things they print is not money, it's currency. It's still undervalued. Obviously, silver's had a good run from its lows in March last year, and so it is a little bit higher there off its bottoms, but it's still undervalued in my opinion. And it's one of a handful of assets that is still a solid 40% or so off its all-time high. You know that I love the mining space, the gold and silver mining space, explorer space. Just look over the last 25 years, the number of miners with positive free cash flow. It's a great time. This is probably the best time to own the miners. They've got their balance sheet. They've got the least amount of debt compared to every other sector. They really cleaned that up over the last 6 or 7 years. They're producing free cash flow. They're cheap on a multiple. There's so many gold and silver miners that are so cheap at the moment, so undervalued. As a value investor, Warren Buffett has got to be looking at this sector. It just makes sense. The return on capital, return on equity, all these things just tick so many boxes. Looking at the GDXJ, so this is the juniors versus inflation expectations. Look, I don't invest in the ETFs. I buy individual gold miners and juniors and explorers. I like that sector. I've had success in that sector. It is difficult to value explorers and buy the right explorers that end up finding the mother lode. It is difficult, but I've done a video on this, how to value and how to find, or what I look for in gold and silver miners and explorers. And so I'll put a link in the description below to that video if you want to learn more about how I go about investigating, researching, and finding gold and silver miners and explorers. I'll put a link in the description below. But I just see bullish. I'm actually looking at the market this morning as I record this video, and my gold and silver explorers are just booming after this move in gold and silver. So going back to the chart of silver, where do I think the price of silver is headed? Look, too many of us value gold and silver in terms of dollars. I've never done that. I've shared my story before when I first invested in silver back in 2008-09 and wrote it up to 2011, and I sold my silver. I went over to the US and started buying US real estate in 2012 when the US market had crashed. So I used a thing called wealth cycles, where I basically converted it was around $50,000 to $60,000, put it into silver. That went up dramatically from 2008 to 2011. I then sold that, went over to the US and bought half a dozen properties for cash, no debt. I bought those in Atlanta, Memphis, Orlando, Phoenix. And that's been very, very successful. And just recently, I've actually sold a couple of those properties in this recent property boom. So I've actually sold into this boom. And once again, those properties that I bought from when that I've sold from when I bought have gone up, 300% from when I bought it, and some even more. So, and I bought that when our dollar was at $1.04, so above parity with the US. I've since brought some of those funds back at 67 cents, 72 cents. So I've even made a profit on the currency exchange there. So I don't look at silver as what I can sell it in terms of dollars. I look at how many ounces of silver can buy me a house, how many ounces of silver buy me the stock market, how many ounces of silver buy me other real assets. And so that's how I look at gold and silver. That's how, when people ask, when are you going to sell? I look at what it can buy in other assets. I'm always looking at expanding the asset side of my balance sheet. I'm always looking at maintaining my purchasing power. So can silver go to $30? Absolutely. Silver break its all-time high? Absolutely. Silver go to triple digits? Absolutely. Can it go to 200, 600? Absolutely. However, if it gets to those numbers, we're definitely going to be in an uncomfortable environment, from an inflationary environment. Those of us who hedged and own a lot of gold and silver will do well, and we'll maintain our purchasing power and our standard of living, while a lot of our friends and family won't. So it's important that we educate our family and friends, people that we love and care for, to protect themselves before it's too late. I think gold and silver over the last, since August last year, they've had their pullbacks, they've had their consolidations. And I think moving forward, now that inflation is here and is only going to get worse, we're going to see the price of these things really go up strong. But when do I sell? Well, I look at it as, once again, how many ounces of silver and gold can buy me other assets. And I'm going to do a video later this week about wealth cycles, and I'll share more of my story on how I bought silver, sold it, bought property, and have been selling that property and rebuying silver again. It's pretty cool where you move from one asset class to another. It's not the Big Mac index. We'll talk about that in the next video. But anyway, that's my opinion on silver. That's where I think the value of silver is. I think the value of silver is a protection against the craziness that governments and central banks are doing. In terms of what price it goes to in dollar terms, I got no idea. Absolutely no idea. But that's not its value for me. The value of gold and silver is what it can buy me. Other real assets. And that's what I look to when I decide to sell. That's what I look to when I decide to buy. Anyway, what do you guys think? What do you guys think the real value of silver is? Love to see your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you haven't yet subscribed, do so, and hit that notification bell. You'll get all my videos. I really appreciate the community that we've built here. I loved seeing the comments. I try to reply to most of you and engage. Sometimes I see you having your own conversations, which is fantastic. Anyway, guys, that's it from me. Take care, and I'll see you again on another episode of Finance Uncut.